eurozone inflation has hit a record of 9.1%, with, unsurprisingly, high energy prices the main driving force. The rate was above expectations, and it is the 9th consecutive record for consumer prices rising across the continent again. Let's go live now to speak to EU journalist Jack Parrock, who is in Prague for us this afternoon. Jack, as always, thank you very much indeed. Here we are yet again, another increase in inflation, and it's all being driven by those energy prices.
Yeah, of course, Darren, and I think this is something that we're going to expect sort of upward motion for a very, very long time now. Now, this was all really driven, as you might expect, by big inflation in Europe's largest economy, in Germany, where it's hit about 8.8%, which is dragging that inflation rate up quite significantly. Having said that, in France and in Spain, actually the inflation has eased off a little bit, but the countries where it's being most affected, where we're seeing huge numbers of inflation, are countries like Lithuania, which is up over 21.1%, and Estonia well over 25%. So this is bad numbers. And also Eurostat that released those numbers are also now starting to suggest, I mean, as we pretty much already knew, that the eurozone will enter a recession, as we expect most economies to do so, because of these hugely increasing energy prices. And it's going to only get worse, we think.
What is the eurozone, what are individual governments thinking, Jack, about trying to tackle all of this? I suspect we're going to see interest rates go up yet again, aren't we, from the ECB? But is there an attempt to try and mitigate, because it's interesting here, isn't it? There's a big debate at the moment about what the government should be doing to try and bring down the cost of living, not least of all with energy bills. I'm sure those conversations are being had right across the continent.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The ECB at the end of July, they raised interest rates for the first time in 11 years by 0.5 percentage point to 0. Sounds a bit weird, but basically the interest rates is completely flat now. And it is expected that there could be more intervention. But with these numbers so high, the question is what can really be done? Because the European Union as an organisation actually doesn't like too much market intervention, and especially not in energy, which is a national competency for each EU country. So every country goes out and buys their own energy. Now, there has been a bit of a patchwork, some complicated issues. For instance, Spain put on a bit of a subsidy and cap into its gas prices, which has managed to keep them kind of okay in Spain, but it's meant that there's been energy leakage, which has been going. So the French on the border regions with Spain have been buying up the energy, which is cheaper over the border. We know next week, at the end of the week, energy ministers from the European Union have been called to Brussels for an emergency meeting to discuss this, to try and find some way of dealing with this. Important to say as well, Darren, well, might be tempted for a bit of schadenfreude in the UK seeing this. I mean, the inflation is overall double in Britain, what we're seeing in the European Union now.
And just very funny, Jack, you're in Prague for a reason, and that's because I think foreign ministers have been meeting today, haven't they, looking at visas for Russians going into the EU, and they have reached somewhat of a deal.
They have, yeah. So the foreign ministers that came to Prague, it's been a bit of a sort of fudge, as you can imagine. Often these meetings, as you well know, are, Darren. But they have come up with a sort of interesting fudge this time. The Baltic countries were wanting an all-out ban on Russian tourist visas from entering the European Union. They obviously received the most people into their countries across the border. They share borders with Russia. Now, they haven't agreed to that. They've agreed to suspend a 2007 agreement that gave preferential treatment for Russian visas. But the French and the Germans are nervous that that sort of tourism from Russia provides a sort of window into Europe that will benefit the sort of messaging of the Russian population. But what they did agree is that in the document that's come out is that national governments do have the competency to decide what they do on the issuing of visas. That's actually always been the case. But the Baltic countries and Finland and Poland have said that what they see is this as a green light to stop issuing those visas, to clamp down hard and to do it together. And they're already going to have a meeting. Those 5 countries, just the 5 of them, they're going to do that on Friday. So that's going to be a big restriction on the amount of visas that are issued. They issue a lot of them. 10 million Russians currently have a visa into the European Union in their passport, so that you can expect some changes to that in the coming weeks. They say that they're going to move as quickly as they can.